Okay.
Perfect. So my wonderful role is to start really by welcoming each and every one of you and saying just how grateful we are for your time. Lesley and I will introduce ourselves properly in just a moment, but our intention across the next 90 minutes is to share with you our respective zones of genius, our expertise and our passion, very much around interwoven language and coaching and how we feel that can best support the leaders that we all need in order for us to move through these challenging times and into quite a bright and brilliant future. We've called this masterclass The Language of Change and Coaching with Precision, Impact and Integrity because should we move to the introductions? Because I'm jumping ahead of myself, Lesley, as I tend to. So we're going to be talking about how communication is just very significantly more than just words. And I'll explain when we do our introductions I'll start that now, actually. I'm a psycholinguist. So I've spent the last 25 years specialising in the psychology of language and the applied use of language to help us to very deliberately communicate. And that sounds like a very strange thing. Quite often we talk about things being bigger and bolder and brighter and better. And I'm talking about being deliberate and reliable. But the one thing that I've learned over the last 25 years is that if we can land a message, if someone can hear and feel and experience our message in the exact way that we intend. Oh, I'm just going to mute. Let me just... we just mute everybody. If we can be really deliberate and land our message exactly as we intend, then actually that's where the magic really happens. And there are some hurdles in the way of us doing that, and we're going to be covering a few of those as we go through together. Do you mind going through and muting, Lesley? Is that okay? Just as people are joining, that'll be fab. So in terms of introductions, my name is Felicity. I'm the Managing Director for the UK for Inspirational Group. And I also work with Lesley on the coaching side. Because of my background in communications and psychology, I've worked globally for some of the biggest brands in the world, helping them to communicate with impact and integrity. And I joined Inspirational Group just under a year ago to bring that expertise into the leadership sphere. Can I pass over to you, Lesley, just to introduce yourself and then we can finish off the outcomes?
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Yes, so my name is Lesley Mourant and I am the principal coach here at Inspirational Group. So just a little bit about my background. I actually started my career in human resources. I've worked in predominantly financial services institutions, so trusts, funds, businesses that are going through mergers and acquisitions. So within my role, what I was very accustomed to was really looking after the people, looking at the culture and how we bring culture into organizations, especially organizations that are going through significant change. That later led me into this world of leadership coaching, where I help individuals and organizations bring a coach approach to their own leadership. So it's something that I am truly, truly passionate about. And the more people that I feel that we can get and using that coach approach, not only in skills, but in mindset as well, I believe that we can really make a business better than the day it was before. So that's my little intro. I'm going to pass you back over to Fliss.
Thanks, Lesley. And I think we both really agree. We're so passionate about this, and which is why we're so excited to be presenting to you guys today. And this is meant to be very much a collaborative session. So my invitation to you as we go through is, if you have questions, pop those into the chat. And whoever isn't speaking, Lesley or I, we will be coming in and we'll be weaving those questions and trying to answer them for you. But we're also going to have a couple of pauses as we go through, where we will take ourselves off spotlight and we'll come to you and just see how that's landing, see how we can help you to more deeply understand or deeply consider how you can embed those learnings into your day-to-day practice, your leadership journey, if you will, because this is all around weaving in language and weaving in the psychology, the physiology, understanding the more nuanced elements of communication. This is about unlocking potential in the people that we're working with, whether that is briefing upwards, sideways, or down to our direct reports. Should we get started, Lesley?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. So I want to begin with a very simple truth, and that is the way that we speak to others and to ourselves shapes the results that we are going to get as leaders. I just want you to think for a moment about the last time that you felt truly heard, okay? What was it about the person's presence or the words that they spoke to you? What was it that really made the difference? Chances are it wasn't what they said, but how they said it and how they made you feel. And that's really why we're here today and why it really matters. So you can see up on screen here that I've just got a couple of stats and a little chart here. So I want to move to the communication model. So this is the research of Dr. Morabian, and you may have come across this before. And really, what he talks about in his research is that the words that we use, okay, in our communication, only 7% of our feelings, attitudes, and how we feel about it make the difference. Okay, and you can see there that actually 38% is in our tone and 55% is in our body language. So this means then that tone alone carries over 5 times more weight than words themselves. And this is particularly important in leadership, where your presence and your energy really set the emotional tone for your culture and for your teams. So I want to layer this then in mindset. A study published in the Harvard Business Review found that leaders who consciously adopt a mindset of curiosity, okay, over judgment, foster 24% higher team engagement and 40% more creative problem solving. Well, why is that? Because language, external and internal, is either opening or closing possibility. Okay, so today we're diving into 2 core areas: the language that we use with others, so using powerful, open-ended questions, making sure that we are actively listening and tuning into tone to spark insight and trust. You will learn how to question shift your thinking and the thinking of others so that it's not just about gathering information. We want to think about how our inner dialogue and our inner mindset really helps shape what we bring into every room. So we'll explore these tools to shift from pressure to possibility, from doubt to presence. Because here's the thing, as leaders, we are not just driving outcomes, okay? We are shaping emotional and linguistic environments. So I want to leave you with just one thing before we get into the bulk of today's session, and that is your language equals your leadership footprint.
I love that leadership footprint. It's a really lovely visual image. And if we can go on to the next slide, Lesley, I would love a tiny bit of feedback from you. Can anyone tell me? You can see that I've blocked out. I did this and a training about 3 months ago and realised that where I've put those white blocks, it does actually answer the question that I'm going to ask, which is, what is this image of? Can anyone put in the chat? Does anyone know, or know why I might be highlighting it with you right now? Just going into the chat.
No.
The Rosetta, yes, absolutely. Oh, gold star to all of you who have already answered. Thank you. Yes, indeed, to the Rosetta Stone. And the reason that I've put this here, it's just something I would love you to keep in mind. So the Rosetta Stone is hugely impactful because we discovered the wonders of the Egyptians. But we had no way of understanding what the hieroglyphs meant. We made educated guesses, we decoded as far as we could, but there was only ever guesswork. We didn't really know until we discovered the Rosetta Stone, because there are 3 faces, one of which includes ancient Greek, which we did know very well indeed, and the other was a direct translation into hieroglyphs, and it allowed us to decode the Egyptian language and to understand not just that two-dimensional face of what they were trying to share, but actually some of the richness and the description. It allowed us to really deeply dive into the stories that they were telling of themselves and each other. So essentially, this is what we're looking at doing today. When we talk about the language of coaching or the language of leadership, this is about your Rosetta Stone, your ability to have something to allow you to decode the preferences and the language of the people around you, whether those are stakeholders, whether those are coachees, whether, as I said before, those are direct reports to the side or upward reporting. Our intention is a pretty meaty intention to be the Rosetta Stone in 90 minutes, but at least to give you some framing or framework to move forwards on. Can we jump to the next slide, Lesley? Thank you for taking control of the deck this morning. So one of the first things I wanted to talk to you about, many of you will be trained, will have read, will know lots of Carl Jung's work. I mean, he was so prolific. But one of the things that really impacts, Lesley talked about the body language element, and we had a few questions in the chat related to body language. One of the reasons that body language is so impactful in our communication is that our brain will automatically and always be running a risk analysis. There's a hypervigilance to assessing where we need to be wary. And when someone's body language isn't congruent, it doesn't match, it's not authentic with the message that they're sharing and with their voice, their tone, what happens is we go on to a vigilance. Our brain will kick in and there will be a wariness. That means that not only are we not focused on the message that is being shared with us, actually rapport is broken and we become, depending on how inauthentic or how lacking in congruence they are, depends on how wary we feel we need to be. But either way, it's not a comfortable place, and it's not an impactful place for either party. So one of the things that I will teach when I go into our clients and we look specifically at what we term language mastery, George's note taker is asking questions. I will answer him later, George, if that's okay. One of the things that we look to do, I look to bring consciousness to what Carl Jung refers to as wholeness scales. So in his work, he will talk a lot about, or he did talk a lot about whole selves, least expressed selves. I'm looking at this through the paradigm of voice dialogue for those of you who may be trained in that modality. So voice dialogue was based on Jung's work. It isn't one of his theories per se, but it's an idea that we have these less expressed selves, and this idea that there is a wholeness scale of energetic resonance. So I've put here, it must be authentic, but this is around a recognition of where we are. And actually, when we're looking at building that connection, when we're looking at sharing a message, recognizing where that authenticity is. And can we just click to the next slide, Lesley? So if you can imagine it almost like this graphic equalizer board, and I've chosen two different energies because they feel very different, and I think there'll be a really nice sort of example to land just for our time together today. So the first is enthusiasm. Now, when I talk about authenticity, my invitation to you is to recognize where you naturally sit on that scale. Absolutely, we can all ramp up, we can all ramp down, but where is your home, your natural home? Now, I often use the example, my lovely husband is ex-military. He is very measured. He is very calm. He's trained in crises, and he's the person that you want to be with if there's a tsunami or a volcano, or he's definitely that person. But on the enthusiasm scale, he probably sits at around a 2 or a 3. He sits very calmly. He's very happy about this. This is no criticism of him. My natural state, I'm actually quite calm for this because I'm conscious that we are speaking to lots of people from all over the world, and some of whom may not have English as a first language. But my natural state would be an 8. I am a children's TV presenter, excited, enthused, big gestures. I speak quickly. My voice is very lyrical. I have lots of ups and downs. My enthusiasm is palpable. The difference between a 2 and an 8 is very significant. That distance is too large a gap for me to meet the other where they are. And we will cover off a little bit later about responsibility in communication. My belief, is that it's our responsibility, 100% our responsibility for our message to land. It isn't 50-50. It isn't meeting each other. Actually, it's on me to make sure that you understand me exactly as I intend. Now, I can't go from an 8 all the way to a 2 and still be authentic. We'll talk a little bit later, but around all of the ways in which you may show and mirror that enthusiasm, but you're looking at your facial expression. You're looking at eyes. You're looking at hands and gesture. Obviously, if we're in person, it's the entire physiology. It's your body, whether you're leaning backwards or forwards, and all of this. It's your voice. And of course, it's the words that you use. Now, I can't move from an 8 to a 2, but I can get to a 4 or a 5. And I will do that by slowing my tone. I will drop my tone slightly. I will pause more frequently and more deliberately, to allow the other person the opportunity to consider what I'm saying. You can hear, I'm modeling it now. My hands have slowed. My gestures have become more precise and more deliberate. In no way do I look inauthentic. I feel comfortable here at a 4 or a 5. I love being an 8. And actually on this call, I'm probably sitting at around a 6 or a 7. Now, I have been asked whether this is inauthentic. Am I teaching people to do something that isn't right for them? And my argument is absolutely no. This is the equivalent of choosing the outfit that you're wearing for that occasion. I went to an event on Thursday evening where I wore a beautiful dress and heels. Today, I'm wearing nice trousers and a top. Were I to go to the supermarket shopping, I would probably wear jeans and a t-shirt. All three of those are genuine, authentic representations of me. I'm showing a different side based on the situation and who I am in that moment. We are wonderful 360-degree individuals. Now, once I've met that person at a 4 and had a conversation, which makes it, I am flexing to make it easier for them to understand me. That is my gift to the conversation exchange, the communication exchange. Enthusiasm, I'm talking about this from a video call or from in person, but the same comes on the telephone, but we just have our voice. The same comes on email, we just have our words. I've taught wholeness scales to customer service teams who work just on instant messenger, WhatsApp for business or equivalent. We can still evidence enthusiasm and these other energetic resonances based on where we feel someone is. This is about, exactly as Lesley said beautifully to frame us at the beginning, bringing curiosity to where that individual is and how can I authentically move towards them. Can we move to the next slide, Lesley? Thank you, because the next one is slightly different. So I've chosen Gravitas, and Gravitas is not power. It's not power above or over or on or through. Gravitas is the intangible sense of a person's authority. Gravitas can be taught. I have taught it. I do teach it. But Gravitas is something that we can choose to dial up and down, not just to meet someone where they are, but to meet a situation. So I quite recently took an MD of a fantastic organisation, wonderful, wonderful man, loved by his team, genuinely, really loved by his team, but very British and very uncomfortable with talking about his brilliance. He would talk about his team. He would talk about we and our, probably one of the reasons that his team loved him so much. The problem was they were owned by an American finance house. And the American board took his humility as a lack of confidence. We've talked in the past, and we will again, about cultural transference and challenge. So how perceptions across culture can be quite challenging. And this is a natural one. We see it a lot between the UK and the US. So I had to help him to dial up his gravitas without taking on the behaviours that the American board were presenting. He didn't want to show up in the way that they were. That would be inauthentic for him. What he wanted to do was to stand in his power. He didn't speak louder. He didn't get bigger. He didn't speak faster. What he did was he brought deliberation to the words that he used, his vocal variety. He dropped his tone slightly. He actually spoke slower, but with more authority. He used tools and techniques like pausing. A pause in the right place shows utter confidence. It shows poise. It allows you to catch your breath so that you're not. If you find yourself running out of breath at the end of a sentence, it can make you sound quite nervous. He grounded himself in genuine gravitas, and I've already had great reports. His next board meeting went beautifully, and he felt very comfortable in his skin. So the reason I've brought these wholeness scales to you guys today, and I brought them so early in our session together, is for you to have curiosity around where you may be. And it will change. I know. So I'm the mum of a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I know that when I'm at the school gates or I'm doing something with my children, my enthusiasm is even higher. My gravitas is significantly lower. It's around grounding and making things accessible for them and their friends. I also know when I walk into a boardroom, my gravitas goes up to a 7 or an 8, and I own my space. I'm confident in my skin. Gravitas is a gift that we give to other people. It isn't a power. It's not a power play. When we are in our power, it's not an aggressive thing. When we're in our power, we gift everyone around us the confidence to know that they're in the safest of hands. So what I would suggest, and what I do during a full day's training, I gift the people in our session the opportunity to dial it up and dial it down and feel into where their limits are. Where is their comfort? There's usually a 2 or a 3 point zone, unless you're really practiced and you learn to stretch those, that sit comfortably. So outside of this call, when you have a quiet moment, perhaps when you're with people who don't know you in a social setting, or you find yourself at the supermarket, dial up your enthusiasm 1 or 2. See how it feels. Look at the results that you get. The next time you walk into a team meeting or that you're on a call like this, dial up your gravitas. See where you can get to without feeling that it's too much of a stretch. You'll recognize when it's too far either way, because it will start to feel physically uncomfortable. You'll start to feel like you're faking it. And I'm not a fan of, as a scientist and a psychologist, I'm not a fan of fake it till you make it. I'm a fan of priming our mind so that it helps us to achieve what we want it to achieve. So just pausing briefly, are there any questions around this ability to dial up, dial down, and to meet people or to meet a situation where it is? Going into the chat briefly. Nothing's coming up quite yet. Please explain gravitas once more. Sure. So gravitas, only how to do it. Okay. So gravitas is the intangible sense of empowerment, of someone being at ease, in authority. It's not an expression of overt power. It is. Gravitas is, have you ever been in a situation when someone's walked into the room and you felt them walk in? You've just known there's someone that has presence, they have authority, they have a real sense of intangible confidence, poise, ease. Does that help, Sunaina? And Harriet, in terms of how to do it, dialing it. Yes, good, thank you. Harriet, in terms of how to do it, the dialing up and the dialing down, it's a case of taking a breath, recognizing once you know where you are. So imagine that you're a 5. I visualize dialing up on a graphic equalizer board. So if I need to up my enthusiasm, I will visualize, I'll close my eyes briefly, I'll visualize ramping that up once or twice, a couple of points. I'll take a breath and then I allow myself. So it's all the things that we were talking about. So think about your face, think about your speed with which you're speaking. Think about, to be more enthusiastic, you're going to be more lyrical. So your voice is going to be coming up and down. There's going to be a wider range of vocal variety. You're going to be more expressive. So you may nod more, you may be more enthused. Often you'll be using your hands more, a little bit more expressive. And the opposite would be true to dial that down. From the gravitas, I did talk a little bit about what we were telling our MD to do. The art of pausing. Yeah, do you know, absolutely. So from the power of the pause, actually, it's something that we're looking at weaving into our next coaching session. The power of the pause, I cannot underestimate the impact that pausing has, because it allows everybody to ground in the authority, the impact, and the authenticity of what they're saying. We've only got 90 minutes today, so I've only been able to touch on it, but I promise that all of these are going to be further unpicked as we have future sessions. Brilliant. So, well, yeah, absolutely, when you write as well. I'm conscious, I'm just going to close down the chat briefly now, and just, only because I'm taking up a bit more than my turn, aren't I, Lesley? I'm so sorry, I get a bit excited about all of this. There is one other element that I wanted to cover with you. If we could move on to the next slide, Lesley, and that's, many of you will be aware of sensory language and expanded sensory language, but I wanted to dive into this time. So in past sessions, I've talked to you about things like information density preferences, and this is another way. So from the psycholinguistics perspective, there are around 400 separate filters and preferences, so types of filter and preference, that make each and every one of us distinct. And this is one of them. But I wanted to bring this to our presentation, to our talk today, because I've seen it have significant impact in terms of ability to connect and ability to understand. So I was in a situation just a month or two ago where a new CEO had come in, and he was really excited about bringing this new vision for the business to life. He invited his senior team. He had an enormous whiteboard put up across the entire wall of the boardroom. And he started sketching out how the business was going to look, the way it was going to change over the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years. And he invited his senior team over that week to come in and weave in their ideas. He had a really brilliant chief operating officer who 6 days into this invitation still had not gathered her recommendations and put them on the board. His perception of her was that she was either not joining in, she didn't care, she wasn't engaged. He told himself a story all about the ways in which she was electing not to support the team, and he was pretty much ready to read her the riot act, so to discipline her, to have a really challenging conversation. But he and I were meeting at that point, and I invited him to give some thought to how she might be experiencing the world around her. And he hadn't realized that we all have a sensory language. It's our primary representational system. It's the number one way in which we process the world around us. And as with most things, most of us believe that we are normal, that our system is the same as everybody else's, and it isn't. I've picked 4 here to share with you all today, but actually there are 8 or 9, but these 4 are the main ones. They cover about 95% of the population. They do flex a little based on country and culture, but they always remain that these 4 are the core very significantly. And as a thank you for attending today, what I will do, Lesley and I have prepared some extra slides that we will send out to you that include specific words and phrases for each of these 4 languages, just to help you to listen out. The power comes in recognizing where you are and in recognizing where somebody else is. And as I've already said, learning, having the intention to flex, for you to meet them more where they are. This CEO who was visual, he wanted to design, draw, capture his vision. Actually, the person that he was talking about, his COO, who is brilliant, she was not. She was kinesthetic. She wanted to talk to him. So actually for her, she managed to capture it. She talked to him about the impact, the feeling. She was able to demonstrate to him her vision, and he captured it in visual. And actually some of her ideas were the most impactful. They had the biggest potential to change the challenges culturally that he had inherited and to set in place the kind of culture that he really wanted. So the lesson that we can learn from him and from her is, just because someone doesn't see the world in the same way as us doesn't mean they aren't engaged. We need to bring curiosity to what might be going on for them. So I'm going to talk you through these 4 representational systems, 4 sensory languages, if I may. So I've just got a slide on each. They're a little bit wordy. I'm not going to read them. Obviously, you guys can do that yourselves. And if anyone would like a copy of these slides afterwards, I'm really happy to share those so that you can review them. This is only touching. So again, I can do a half day on sensory language, and I'm going to do about 15 minutes. So I'm really happy. If I can't get to all the questions as we move forwards, please reach out, and I will absolutely, we can have a lovely, perhaps we can jump on a Zoom call or a Teams and we can talk it through. So can we jump on to the next slide, Lesley, if you don't mind? Thank you. So visual learners, of these 4 preferences, what I would love you guys to do, as I'm describing them, I would love you to see and think about where you are. So where is your home turf? Where are you most comfortable? Thank you, everybody, for the slides. Yes, I'm going to send them out to everybody. I think I've had about 20 people say yes. I'm like, do you know what? We'll send them to you all. From the visual perspective, so visual learners prefer seeing information. So visual people, I say visual learners, but these are visual communicators, essentially. If you find that you love a chart, a diagram, a picture, if someone's describing something to you and you want to see it, or you find yourself grabbing a pen and starting to draw it out, you're likely to be a visual processing person. You will often, if you're reading something, you'll ring it, you'll highlight it, you'll draw stars around it. If you're thinking of an idea and you're trying to come to a resolution, you might find yourself doodling, drawing without thinking in terms of stars or whatever it might be, just drawing some kind of a picture while you're on the telephone, for example. You're finding yourself drawing or making notes or writing odd pieces down. You're often someone who recognizes faces or places really easily. You're the person who will say, gosh, we met 4 years ago. And the other person's thinking, I don't even remember being in that place. You are probably also someone who is very adept. You find it easier to see that bigger picture. Chunk up and look down over the whole scenario. Can we jump onto the next one, Lesley? Thank you. So the second profile is auditory. Now, auditory people, these are the people who recorded their revision notes while they were studying and listened back to them. They're the people who love listening, not watching, but listening to TED Talks, or love listening to audiobooks and can absolutely follow them. For lots of other people, they just say, I can't quite get it. I'm listening, but then I have to listen back again and it just doesn't quite land. I don't know why. What's wrong with me? The answer is nothing. You just process the world differently. Auditory people deal really well with traditional teaching environments. Someone at the front speaking and they listen, they may make notes, but they deal with that whole process brilliantly. They probably were great at school. They learn things by either repeating them aloud or reading them aloud, or they might link them to music or to some kind of sequence, an audible sequence. And they store information often by how it sounds. Can we jump to the next one, Lesley? Thank you. Kinesthetic people. Now, kinesthetic people are much more around physicality and movement. They're all about the body. They're quite tactile learners. And often you can see, I'm a natural kinesthetic. You can see kinesthetic people because they overuse their hands. I've spent 25 years learning mastery of communication, and I choose to be extra expressive with my hands. I know that it can be distracting, but it's my natural ability, and it brings my enthusiasm to life. Kinesthetic people are the ones who really enjoy practical real world experiences. We do a lot of our learning development to meet every one of these sensory needs. And often we will take people outside of the classroom and we'll set them a physical challenge, asking them to fix something, come up with a way to achieve something, working as a team. These guys work beautifully in that environment, and they actually need to be really physically engaged to retain that information fully. So you might see a kinesthetic person if you're sitting in a small room and you're 6 or 7 hours in, they might actually need to get up and walk around. They might need to just physically engage in order for their brain to continue processing. And then our final type is auditory digital. And these people need to know about the why. Why is something important? They need to understand the rationale. You can give them an instruction, but unless it makes sense, they're going to really struggle to follow it, not just to do it, but to understand it. It's about logic. They are all about the brain and priming the brain. They like logical, structured order. They love a flow chart. Number one, number two, number three. If you're doing instructions for auditory digital people, give them bullet points and number them, but make them make sense. They've got to be in the right order. You can recognize an auditory digital person because they actually talk to themselves quite a lot. They don't always realize they're doing it, but they're talking it out in their own mind. They like to memorize sequences or steps. They're the person who, when they were doing a driving test, absolutely focused on what first, what second, and what next, and in which order. So that gives you a very, very brief introduction to one of the ways in which we experience the world differently. And actually, the reason that we're landing this, hopefully very deeply for you, is that it can be the most confronting and it can be the most challenging because, as I said before, we believe that our window on the world is normal and that anyone who doesn't have that same window, actually, there's something a little bit odd about them, or they're not quite the same. It's their problem that they don't see or feel or hear or think about the world around us in the same way. It's not us. And actually, if you are in a situation where you need to capture your team's brilliance, perhaps don't put a whiteboard out. Perhaps ask people to come up and draw or tell me or bring to life or go away and give some thought and come back with a report. However you best want to capture your ideas, I really want to hear them and see them and feel them and understand them. So all four of those references link to each of the sensory preferences. I've just seen the question from Nicola. Can you be a bit of all of these? So you will have a primary preference, but what happens when you are a consummate communicator, when you've been in the leadership sphere for a long time, or you've been a coach, we learn adaptability. So I can speak all of these languages, but I know that actually kinesthetic was my first, and kinesthetic is my more natural home. If I had an opportunity, I would prefer to be physically up and engaged and moving. And I demonstrate, when I talk, physicality really matters to me. So I would say there is one that is more natural for you. Let's just pause for a moment just to take any questions that you might have. Do you pop anything in the chat? Oh, you're kinesthetic too, Nicola. Good. We'll get together. We'll go for a walk. We can have a chat about it then. Concept map, Caroline. Let me just go back. I think I might have concept map. Yeah, I mean, from a concept map perspective, yeah, lots of people, mind maps and concept maps were hugely popular a few years ago, and a few of us just didn't get what was wrong with us. Why do we not want to do a mind map? And actually, it's because we're not visual. Auditory digital people quite like to mind map too, because it was logical. But for the auditory and for the kinesthetic people, it just doesn't work for us. Any questions from anyone here before we move on? And really happy to, should we alter our style depending on the, yeah, absolutely will. It's a great question and we should. So once you know where you are, and that's the important starting point, we need to recognize where other people are and where is the difference between us. And then it's up to us to bridge that gap, to meet them as close to where they are as we can authentically. So you may not be able to speak their language fluently, but you may be able to move towards it. So if you're kinesthetic and you're talking to an auditory digital person, don't talk about feelings, talk about logic. That might be something that feels authentic and that you can do. When you're dealing with a big group of people, so I've delivered a talk, I think the biggest audience I've ever spoken to is about 2,000 people at a big arena, Excel in London. And when you're speaking to that amount of people, you might want to include references to each of those 4 core types of language. So you cycle through them. So if I was giving a presentation, I would have a chart or a visual from a PowerPoint perspective. I would have, so what I'm doing here, you've got me being as expressive as I can be for the kinesthetics in the room. The auditory people can listen. Those visuals, you're able to read the slides yourself. You can read ahead, you can jump, you can make sense. And the auditory digital people, actually, I've got bullet points in there because you guys prefer that. And I'm taking you on a journey. Now, I could make these slides even more accessible, but actually, this is really just about giving you a snippet. These are points of curiosity for you to bring awareness. If something isn't landing, if you're speaking to a team member or if you're briefing a coaching client, for example, and something just isn't landing, they're not quite getting what you're saying, I'd love this just to sit quietly in the back of your mind and for you to say, okay, perhaps they're speaking a different language, and listen. So we'll send you, as I say, the words and the phrases that we will unconsciously use, which are indicative of which of those 4 languages, sensory languages we speak. Listen for those and see how you can adapt. How you go about doing that, it's a little bit trial and error. It's a little bit trying to meet them where they are. And we've given you a bit of information here. But again, if there's an appetite, we can do a session just on sensory preference. There's so much that we want to share with you that Lesley and I, we pulled together this amazing training, and then we've had to refine it down because it would have been about 2 days long. And I don't think anyone's quite got that time, have they, Lesley?
No, not today.
Yeah, Carol, that's absolutely brilliant. And as an instructor, that's exactly what you need to do from a classroom perspective. Thank goodness they've got you, that you can cycle through those preferences and allow them to learn. Well done, you. Do you know, Brendan, that's fascinating. Yes. So from a diversity perspective, lots of blind or partially sighted friends are visual learners. This isn't about the literal visual representation. This is around visualizing in your mind. Thank you for that distinction. That's really important. The other 4, Mariana, so they're very niche. You've got things like olfactory, people who process the world through smell. Gustatory, so people who quite literally, it's around taste and gut, and it's not kinesthetic in sense of instinct gut. It's food, taste, gut. So I can, when we send over to you the slides, I'll make a point of including those others, but they are very rare. Some of those sort of 1 or 2% of the population. The 4 that we've given you cover off pretty much 95% of any population. This has been sort of tested to the edges of the globe. Just coming back off chat, because I'm conscious of time. I know we're where we need to be, and I thank you. Can I pass over to you, lovely Lesley, if I may?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Fliss. So we're going to take a slightly different turn now. And what I would like you to do, and for you visual learners, this is going to be right up your street, is I would like to do a very short visualization with you. So what I want you to do, if you, if you're sitting there on tenterhooks, I'd like you to just gently close your eyes for a moment to just make sure that you are feeling comfortable. You don't have to be looking at the screen, just listen to my voice. Now, what I would like you to do is bring to mind the most challenging, frustrating colleague that you have ever worked in. Somebody who perhaps they just constantly spoke over you. Maybe they resisted all of the great changes that you were trying to make within the team. Maybe they just made every single conversation a little harder than it needed to be. I want you to picture their face, to just see it now in your mind and hear their voice. Just really picture the moment you saw their name pop up in your inbox or you saw their number flash up on your mobile screen. Just notice what happens in your body. What's happening right now? Is it bringing back those feelings? Is there a clench in your jaw? Maybe there's a bit of a tightness in your shoulders. Perhaps you're holding your breath ever so subtly. You've shifted your posture. I just want you to let yourself feel the impact of that emotional and energetic response for a moment. And now you've got all of those good or perhaps not so good feels. I just want to bring your attention back to me and just really recognize that there really is an internal cost here of our unprocessed frustration. Yeah, these frustrations that we hold about people that we come into contact with. And these frustrations, if we're not careful, if we're not conscious to it, we can carry this into the rooms, into the meetings, into the decisions and conversations that we have with our teams and outside of our business. So how do we face this, and why am I bringing this up in a workshop? I'm sure that you did not want to come here today to start getting frustrated about that colleague that you absolutely really didn't want to be working with. Well, a lot of the work that I do in coaching, bringing skills and bringing mindset to leaders and to those of us that want to have coaching conversations, much of what we do is built on building principles and really holding principles true to our hearts. Fliss mentioned around authenticity, so what we hold true, but also as a way of being able to really ground ourselves when we go into communicating with others. So what I would like to do now is just share these principles that we use here at Inspirational Group when we use our own leadership coaching model, so that you can really get a flavour of what we're trying to do. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to tell you a very quick story. When I used to work in HR, I used to have a colleague who I would contact on a regular basis. I had to. It was a big merger and acquisition. They were coming from the other business, and I needed to get information from them. We were in different locations, so we never came face to face, really. We were just always communicating via the telephone. This was before the times where we could get up on screen and see each other's faces. Every single time I talked to this person, I would ask them a quick question, which I thought would take 30 seconds and I could get right back into my work. I'd have the answer. Every single time I spoke to this person, didn't matter what I asked, what I was calling for, they would start explaining in huge detail all of the wraparound information to that answer. And for me, it was building so much frustration. I was creating this dialogue in my mind. Well, firstly, they must think that I'm stupid, because why are they telling me all this information that I already know? Don't they realize that I already know this? The other frustration was, look, I want to get off the telephone. I'm not here to gain all of this extra information. I've just asked you one question. I really want the answer to it. And it was becoming a real problem. I really dreaded contacting this person because it was just building so much frustration in myself. Well, look, we all know that we don't have the ability to truly change others. We can only change ourselves. And what I ended up doing within this particular scenario is that every time I went to pick up the phone to them, before I even started to dial their number, I had to just tell myself, Lesley, they are calling, or they have good intentions. Okay, so they are giving me information with good intentions. And I'd have to tell myself this, a couple of times just before building up that courage to dial the phone. And I cannot tell you what a difference that made to our conversations, because actually I was holding a different mindset. Instead of getting frustrated, instead of thinking, this person just thinks I'm stupid, they're wasting my time, I actually felt, you know what, they're really trying to do a good thing here for me. They're trying to pass on information that they're not sure that I know. So that's just a little story about my own experiences with frustration, but just back to the principles. So when we think about coaching conversations, there is a particular mindset that we are looking to achieve, we want to achieve. As I mentioned right at the beginning of this session, you can ask all the great questions in the world. You can use your words, you can know You can know what to say, you can have the right things to say, but if your intent behind those words is not in the right space, then it's going to land really awkwardly. And people will pick up on it. You will know. How many times have you gone into a meeting and somebody will say, "How are you?" And you know they don't really care how you are. They're just making small talk. Or they say, "Oh, great job." And actually, they have no idea what you've been up to. So we're really bringing it back to the forefront of our mind about what this intent is. So there you can see a little bit of it looks like a solar system around a planet, the planet being principles. So we have 5 principles that we use within our leadership coaching model. The first one is being trust the client. And what I would invite you to do is to use this in terms of trusting the person that is in front of you, that you're about to communicate with. Okay, you believe that they are whole, good, and resourceful. Okay, they are not there with bad intent. They are not trying to waste your time. They are not trying to make out you're stupid. They don't want to make this difficult. Actually, you trust that they want to go in a forward direction with you. Accept, blend, and create. So, what we mean by accept, blend, and create is all about accepting somebody where they are in that moment. Okay, so them having the permission to bring themselves to the table, wherever they are. It doesn't matter about where you're going to get to. It's just about being in this moment. Blending is about creating questions that are actually going to move this conversation forward. Okay, you're going to use questions that are relevant to the communication that you are currently having. And creating is all around creating a way forward. Okay, so perhaps getting a plan together. Maybe it's just about talking through a particular situation in a really productive way. Now, presence. Again, I'm sure you've all been in a scenario where you've been talking to somebody online, virtually, perhaps face to face, and you know that the person who you are talking to is distracted by other things. Perhaps they're trying to get through to their emails. Maybe they haven't even really calmed down from their previous meeting, and you can just tell that actually, even though they say they're listening, they're not really there with you. Now, as we move down this ribbon, you can see possibility. When we coach and when we have coaching conversations, it's not about being totally positive, okay? We're not into toxic positivity. We're not there to say, "Oh, everything's brilliant. What are we complaining about?" It's not about that at all. But what it is about, it's about creating possibility from where we are. So even if you were having the worst possible day you could imagine, there is always the belief and the hope that we can move forward in some way. And we're not talking about taking gigantic leaps. This could just be, you know what? Because I'm British, I need to go and have a cup of tea and just take 5 minutes to just get myself back into a state where I can think more rationally again. And then the final principle is all around partnership. So one of the strong beliefs that we have here within our coaching business and the services we provide is that you can coach from wherever you are. Okay, this isn't a prerequisite of being a leader, having to coach a junior. You can coach up, you can coach sideways, you can coach downwards. It is all about knowing the skills and having the principles at the forefront of your mind. So when you come and have these types of conversations and you're communicating with others, you take your role and status out of the equation. You come to the conversation as an equal. There is not a power struggle. We are just trying to have a productive conversation. So For me, I have a huge belief that actually these principles are fundamental to the impact that you'll make. And if you decide that you are going to communicate and have coaching conversations with others, then you must make sure that these principles are at the forefront of your mind, or else they just won't be as effective. Now you can see that picture of an anchor. And what I would like to do just for a moment is I would like you to think about, I'd like you to think about business, and I would like you to just think for a moment and pop into the chat the types of metaphors that you might see and hear or even use for yourselves in business. So, and if you're wondering what a metaphor is a visualization. It's an object, or it's a scene. It's something that isn't actually what it is, but we relate it to that feeling or to that picture of that environment. So just for a moment, think about a metaphor that you use or that you've come across in leadership. And what I would like you to do is just pop it into the chat. So one of the metaphors that I come across quite often in my role is breaking glass ceilings. Anybody literally broken a glass ceiling to get a promotion or move forward in their role recently? Oh, I love that, Mariana. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Brilliant. Get up, dress up, show up. Thank you, Buddha.
But I
Being
know
in
the
a washing
clowns.
machine. Sophia, that is wonderful. What other metaphors have you got? And Fliss, could I kindly ask that you perhaps shout any more that come through?
Absolutely.
Great. How about steering the ship? Again, that's quite a regular one that I hear. Or even for yourselves, your North Star. What is your North Star in leadership? What is your North Star in the coaching that you want to achieve?
Climbing a mountain, I've got the grease between the gears.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I like that. When you're having conversations, it's really useful for you to have your own metaphors, or perhaps, I use the anchor, in terms of grounding myself. If you think about what an anchor is, it's creating stability. For me, it builds hope. But it's also a really interesting way of actually seeing what somebody's thoughts are around their own situations. So asking somebody to create a metaphor for themselves. And the question could be, so give me a metaphor for leadership. What does it mean for you? What is it like in this place? And some examples could be, leadership is like a lighthouse. And we can interpret that. Well, does that mean guiding without the need to follow? Leadership is like a dance. It only works when you're in sync with others. Or perhaps leadership is like a garden. It's about nurturing and not controlling. So you can see here how we can paint a really vibrant picture, a very real picture, a very relatable picture, to help us journey through conversations that we're having.
We've got some other ones, great ones in here, and I won't run through all of them, but check out the chat after if you haven't looked at the chat. We've got some particularly brilliant metaphors. Thank you all.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So I feel a bit guilty about bringing frustration to this workshop a little bit earlier on. It's too early in the morning for some of us, and I know that this certainly wasn't the intention that you set out for on a Monday of all days. So what I want us to do is to really bring this back. I want us to revisit this place. Historically, the brain and our bodies were looked at through two very separate lenses. So you have medical, you might go to a doctor about your body, and you would go to a psychologist about your mind. But now we know that actually these two are totally connected. And how do we connect? How do we connect ourselves to our body, especially in those moments when we're about to have a challenging conversation? We know that a conversation that we're about to have is really important, and we want to bring our best selves to that place. Well, it's all about reconnecting ourselves, especially when we have been in our office all day. There has been lots of noise, there has been lots of email traffic, we've been darting from one place, one task to another. So, what I want to do with you now is I want us to do a very short exercise to just help us re-bridge that mind-body connection, which can really help to calm an overactive nervous system, to regulate our emotions, and to release physical tension. And it actually goes back to some of the things that Fliss was talking about earlier, about really creating that pause for ourselves. So, what I would like you to do then, again, is I want to invite you to get really comfortable, okay? So just if you're sat down, just find a seated position with a straight, relaxed posture. And what I would like you to do is to place one hand on your chest and the other on your belly. And now what I would like you to do, a really deep, slow breath through your nose, counting to 5. Okay, so you're just going to breathe in for 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now just gently release all of that air through your mouth. Okay. And again for 5. So just releasing it all to the count of 5. Another inhale through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I really want you to feel your belly rise while you're doing this. Okay, you want all of that air going into your stomach. And again, release to the count of 5 through your mouth. And I just want you to do this a couple more times for yourself. So gently inhaling for 5 through your nose, gently exhaling for 5 through your mouth. Feel your belly expanding and retracting as you breathe out. Okay, I'm hoping that you feel a little bit calmer, a little bit more grounded. And if you have the ability, I would love for you to just write in the chat perhaps one word that you're feeling as a result of doing those belly breaths, whilst I move over to Fliss to take us through our next part of the session.
Thank you so much. I'm so relaxed now. This is lovely. This is why I love working with you. And I'm loving all the words coming as well. Can we jump onto the next slide, Lesley, if that's okay?
Sure.
Thank you. So I touched on this earlier, but it's something that I really wanted to land deeply. So I wanted to spend a bit of time. I'm conscious we've got about 20 minutes left together this morning. One of the core areas of focus over the last 25 years for me as a psycholinguist, as a coach, as a behavioral psychologist, as a leader in my own world, in my own businesses and role, is a recognition of the stories that we tell. The stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we tell other people, but primarily our brain is primed to make sense of the world around us. And when we don't have facts, to absolutely indisputable facts, what we do is we fill those gaps. And it's a perfectly natural thing. The reason that we are here is that our brains, our ancestors' brains, told them stories. Those stories tend to be quite risk averse. Those stories tend to assume the worst. You will all have heard of negativity bias, but the reason our brain has a slight leaning towards what may go wrong before it necessarily considers what may go right is that when you think about the brain's sole purpose, it's to keep us alive. Better that we catastrophize and have a bit of regret about a missed opportunity than that we blindly step into something that would not be in our best interests. Recognize the stories that you are telling yourself. If you walked into a restaurant to meet some colleagues or some friends and they were chatting in the corner, and when you approached them, they all went quiet, would you make that mean they were talking about you in a negative way? Or would you make that mean they were planning a surprise for you? They were talking about you in a positive. Whatever you decide has the ability to impact your energetic footprint, exactly as Leslie's been talking about today. And the end result, whether that's in 10 minutes or half an hour or an hour, that meeting, that lunch, perhaps it is, will end very differently. We call it the cycle of creation, and it's based on storytelling. Do you spiral upwards into a positive belief where you behave, you smile, you act, your physiology, your voice, all of those intangible elements that come together that we talked about earlier, lead a really positive interpretation, or is it the other way? One of the reasons, if we can jump onto the next slide, Lesley, if that's okay. I put this here. I asked our wonderful designers for a green car, and I have to say, I think this is the greenest car I've ever seen, but it's here as a visual cue for all of you. Many of you will be aware of some elements of neuroscience. This also, those of you trained in neurolinguistic programming will be aware of this, but our brain, while being a supercomputer, has to run on rails. It doesn't have expansiveness. It has a number of rules through which it operates. And we have the ability, if we can bring awareness to those rules, to change the depth, density, width of our awareness. It really is. This is where the change your mind, change your world descriptive comes from. The green car is there to represent a part of our brain called your reticular activating system. It's shortened as your RAS, reticular activating system, and it's at the top of your brainstem. It's a collection of neurons, and its sole purpose, this collection, sole purpose is to filter the world around us. Essentially, and nobody can quite agree, but we have narrowed it down to an agreement generally that as humans, we are subject to several 100,000 sensory stimuli every second. Several 100,000 every second. And the best estimates are that the human brain can actively process fewer than 10 of those, somewhere between 5 and 9, depending on you personally, how resourced you are, and what the situation you find yourself in. Several 100,000 reduced down to fewer than 10. The way in which we do that, the rules that the brain applies in order to generalize, distort, and delete all of the sensory stimuli that we don't need, the brain focuses on what's important to us. And you can feel this yourself. If you have ever, the green car reference, if you have ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to buy a new car and you've chosen a certain colour because in your mind it's unusual, it's rare, it's beautiful, you don't see that very much. Picture a green car. I'm going to buy a green car. Nobody drives green cars. What you're doing is bringing green cars into your active awareness. And I guarantee you that at some point in the next 24 hours, you will see a green car. Your neighbour will buy a green car. When you're driving down the road, you will have a green car in front of you or behind you. There will be a situation where you will come across a green car. Exactly the same as if someone says reticular activating system. Yes, RAS. There will be the same situation if a friend tells you that they are expecting a baby. Suddenly you will see bumps and buggies and babies everywhere. Now, the reason I'm bringing this to your awareness is they were always there. The green cars were always there. The bumps and the buggies and the babies were always there. Whatever it is that you are suddenly seeing has always been there. But because it wasn't important, or your brain didn't recognize that it was important, you didn't see it. And that's what's really important to see. Sorry, my slides, there we go, that's better. My slides just went a little bit awry. I think we've got some background noise, Leslie. Do you mind just going through and muting? I'm not quite sure. Thank you, lovely. So recognize when it comes to the reticular activating system, what you have is the ability to consciously, very consciously choose the way in which you are processing the world around you. And I would also say, if we can flick to the next slide, if that's okay. Can we flick ahead one? Because I'm going to come back to that just because I'm conscious of time, if that's okay. Thank you. So one of the phrases that I would love you to bear in mind, and it's a phrase that I use all the time in trainings and when I'm facilitating, your truth is 100% your truth. No one is negating the way in which you are viewing the world, but it's not the truth. There are so many filters and preferences and biases for good and bad. I know bias is a word that's really semantically packed from the negative, but a bias is purely a preference that accounts for one over another. Preferences, biases, and filters, all of these make you wonderfully you, and perfectly unique. We talk about language footprint, leadership footprint, but I also talk about language DNA. We have an individuality to the way in which we express and communicate that is built on our view on the world and the stories that we tell ourselves. If you want to widen your awareness, bring consciousness, bring curiosity to the rules that you are overlaying, more often than not, they are unconscious or subconscious. If we can bring them into our awareness, what that allows us to do is curate them. We can choose those that continue to be helpful, and we can add others that will help us on the path of leadership or development. It could be as simple as choosing to look for example. Perhaps you're finding yourself frustrated at team meetings every week because people are being obstructive, or they're being negative, or they're being, exactly as Leslie was talking about with the visualization earlier. It could be that we simply change and we have a reframe that we use, and we filter through our reticular activating system, where we will actually say, I'm actively looking for examples of brilliance. I'm actively looking for examples. My team are great. I'm going to look for examples to reward rather than examples to challenge. It can absolutely change your everyday and your leadership style. Can we jump ahead? If that's okay.
Are we jumping ahead or back?
I'm conscious of time, and I don't want to take away from your curiosity.
Okay. Yep. So okay, let's get curious then.
So we were going to do an exercise with you all, but we were just really keen to land answers to the questions as we've gone. So the exercise itself was really just a demonstration of our communication differences and preferences, but I'm going to save that for the next masterclass when we can really do it justice, if that's okay, Leslie.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful. Brilliant. So myself and Fliss have shared lots of information with you in this 90-minute session. And we really just wanted to bring it back to practical application and how you can really ground yourself and prepare to have better communication. So I'm really going to just share some tips here that you can see up on screen, but also framed around the notion of being curious and open. Okay, so I just want to take you to preparation. So before you have any kind of conversation where you know it could be slightly challenging, or there is a particular need or outcome that you are looking for. Perhaps it's for yourself. Maybe it's I need this meeting to go really, really well because I want to impress them and I want to build my credibility. It could be, I need this conversation to go well, and I just always seem to have these conversations that don't quite land with my team member or somebody that I am line managing. So what can we do then? Well, beforehand, absolutely what Fliss has just been talking about, pausing the story that you are telling yourself, okay? What parts of your narrative aren't true? How can you change that narrative to just put yourself in a better position for the conversation that you're about to have? Number two, adopting the explorer role. Okay, so again, quite often when we're leading, when we are responsible for huge teams or just other people, we can sometimes feel overwhelmed with that sense of responsibility and feel like it's our job to have the right answers or to make sure that we know the way forward. That's not true. Okay, you have great people around you. And I absolutely wholeheartedly know that everybody who is working around you will have something of value to offer. Okay, we just need to provide it to them in terms of giving them that space and also taking the responsibility off of ourselves. So, adopting an explorer role is actually knowing, you know what, Lesley, you don't have to go into this meeting and have the solution, and you don't have to know what the next step is going forward. Actually, what my responsibility is today is just to explore and understand what my team are trying to achieve. Number three, creating and using a curiosity anchor. So again, keeping this open mind. This person isn't trying to frustrate me. What is their intention? What is the root of why they feel the need to continually give me the background story and all of the information that I've not asked for when they are in front of me? So there's a little bit of preparation. And then we've put a pause in there. And the pause can just be you sitting still for a moment, doing those deep belly breaths to really feel grounded and feel relaxed in what you're doing. It could be reminding yourself of that mantra, this meeting is full of good intentions. I am doing my best. I trust myself to have a great meeting. Once you've allowed yourself that pause, you're then going into the conversation. And what do we do when we are actually there in the moment having those conversations? Well, we want to remind ourselves that we're going to ask open and expansive questions. Okay, so can you tell me more about what's important about that for you? Yeah. What is it? What is it that you're thinking about? How would you like to bring a solution to mind? Name what you notice. Okay, so neuroscience science tells us that actually, if we name what we notice, especially the scary things, it doesn't feel so scary bringing it into the room. So we don't want to avoid challenging conversations. We don't want to avoid awkward feelings, or perhaps things that aren't going so well in our teams or just in the tasks that we're trying to achieve. Actually, what we want to do is we want to bring it to the table. I'm noticing some energy around that. What's going on for you? I hear a bit of frustration. Can we explore that? Naming invites openness without being judgmental. Okay, we are there not to be judged and not to judge other people. We're there to create a space where that person can share and we can build that understanding. Separate the person from the position. Again, going back to our principles, this isn't about a power play. This is about two people communicating and trying to find a way forward. So we're almost at the end of our session now. I hope that you found that really useful. To close the session off, what I'd like to do is do one final visualization with yourselves. So I want you to imagine now a different kind of moment. I want you to bring to mind that person that you have struggled with, perhaps the one from earlier. Maybe it's a new person, maybe it's a current challenge that you are currently facing. But now, what I would like you to do is imagine that the next time you meet them, you are grounded, you're calm, and you are clear. You've already chosen your mindset. You're curious, you're open. You remember that they are filled with good intentions, and you trust yourself that you are going to have a great conversation. I want you to picture yourself in that next meeting. Hear yourself asking a question that opens the door instead of shutting it. Watch how they respond. Maybe they're surprised. Maybe you've disarmed them. Maybe they're a little bit softer towards you. See the conversation unfolding in a way that moves forward, even just a little bit. And just feel the satisfaction of leaving the interaction with more clarity and less weight. This is what it feels like to lead from presence. That's the shift of your internal language that we can make possible. So thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. We have had so much fun with you being here, and just so grateful that you've tuned in. Before we let you go, I would like to ask you one final question, and I would love for you to just put your responses in the chat. And that is, what's one thing that you will do differently today as a result of what you have heard today? And I'm going to stop sharing our screen. As I mentioned, or as Fliss mentioned earlier, we will share the slides with you and get all of the great info to your inboxes.
And we'll share a recording of the session, just in case there's any little. I'm conscious I've been trying to jump in and answer just occasional questions in the chat, but it's really difficult to do that while we're being active and involved and present for the session. What I would say is, if we're not yet connected on LinkedIn, please do connect with Lesley Mourant. I'm Felicity Wingrove. Really would welcome that. But both of us are sharing increasing amounts of snippet content that are sort of easily deployable little nuggets, things that you can try that week, that you can build into your own leadership practice, to encourage. Some will be very familiar, there'll be things that you do already, others hopefully will be very new to you. But our genuine commitment is that we are here, we're both really passionate about bringing the language of leadership into consciousness so that people can choose how they're showing up, and they can choose to flex and adapt to the stakeholders, the direct reports, whoever it might be that you're communicating with. Let's just go over. Do you want to go over to the chat to some of the feedback that you're getting there in terms of what people are going to do differently, Lesley? I just wanted to say that, put a bit of framing and say the hugest thank you.
I have to say, I've just been reading them. Getting into it. So brilliant. So the pause is a big thing that's coming up. Remembering to notice what I noticed. Great, Brendan. Remembering gravitas and being authentic whilst flexing, which is so important.
Definitely.
Having a positive mindset, even if the surrounding is negative. Yeah, absolutely. Again, as I mentioned, pause, gravitas. Mariana, great. Being more intentionally present and curious with a challenging friend. Yeah, these skills aren't just for the workplace. They can be used anywhere, and we absolutely invite you to do that. Have a go at just bringing that consciousness to the next few conversations that you have. Remembering to breathe and explore with the upcoming meetings without filling in the factual gaps with negative narrative fillers. Wonderful. Carol.
So I was going to say, just linking into that, I'm so sorry, Lesley, because there's some brilliant things in there. But just please remember, when we think about your truth is not the truth, ask yourself the question. So lots of this is linking into that curiosity. When you are pausing, ask yourself the question, is this the truth? Or is this my truth? And nothing about that is judgmental. Your truth is your truth, and it's absolutely whole and full and fabulous. But the more we are able to recognize that it is also biased, it's biased by all sorts of stories that we're telling ourselves, we can bring curiosity then to how much of it is that person really being off with us? Are they really cross with us? Is our message really not landing? I had a situation a few weeks ago where I was doing a delivery, virtual delivery to Dallas. I've done a lot of work in America, but I've never delivered in Dallas. And I could see these stony faces of people, and I knew the content was great. I knew it was well positioned. I could have told myself the story that they weren't engaged, and that training at the end of the 60, 90 minutes would have landed flat, but I chose not to because it wasn't the truth. I chose to give all of my energy, and at the end of it, they loved it. It turned out it was really empowering for them. They just weren't a particularly expressive group of people. They were quite technical in nature. Don't tell yourself a story until you know it's the truth. Don't let it impact how you choose to act showing up.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Fliss. We've had great engagement from all of you today. Thank you so much for your engagement. It really does help make these things a much better, enjoyable place to deliver from. So thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you at our next masterclasses. Certainly the intention behind what myself and Fliss do is to really just evolve and to deepen the conversations that we have. They're not a rinse and repeat. So please do sign up for our future sessions, and we look forward to connecting with you.
So we have masterclasses every month, and that cycles around the business, but Lesley and I deliver every quarter, specifically around coaching and language. And not that we're encouraging you to have favourites, but if you did want to sign up for ours, that would be perfect. We'd love to have you back again. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and thank you.